All right, let's dive into one of the most fascinating and honestly, one of the most confusing puzzles in all of traditional Chinese medicine, the Sanjiao. It's this concept that's absolutely central to how the body works, but for centuries, what it actually is has been a huge mystery.
You know, this quote from a seasoned practitioner really just nails it. Sanjiao is always floating. It's not like the liver, which you can point to, or a meridian you can trace on a chart. Nope. Sanjiao is elusive. It's this idea that's everywhere in TCM. It's supposed to be coordinating pretty much everything, and yet you can't pin it down. And that, right there, is what makes it so compelling.
So here's the big question, right? What is this vital, critical concept that you literally cannot see? We're going to try and unpack this whole mystery, but not by looking for some physical thing. Instead, we're going to follow the trail of logic that made its existence an absolute necessity in the first place.
Okay, so for centuries, the totally natural impulse has been to try and give this floating concept a physical home, to ground it in something we can actually touch. I mean, if it's so important, it has to be something, right?
A really common idea these days is to connect Sanjiao to the body's fascia network. You know, that incredible web of connective tissue that basically surrounds and holds everything together. And it's a pretty compelling idea because fascia is a system-wide communication network. It kind of fits.
All right, what else? Well, another big candidate is the lymph system. See, the classic texts describe Sanjiao as the passageway for water. So connecting it to the lymph system, which handles fluid and our immune response all over the body, seems like a really logical fit.
And then there's maybe the simplest explanation of all, that Sanjiao isn't a system, but just the physical spaces in the torso, you know, the chest, the abdomen, the pelvis. Basically a container for all the organs.
But here's where things get really interesting. While all those comparisons give us a way to kind of understand how Sanjiao might work, they're only partial answers. They're just projections, and they all miss the much deeper, more fundamental question that the whole concept was created to solve in the first place. Why? Why must something like Sanjiao even exist at all?
And this is where we're going to flip the script. Instead of trying to nail this concept down to a physical object, we're going to reframe the entire investigation.
Seriously, what if the entire hunt for a physical thing has been a giant distraction? The source material we're looking at suggests that the real power of Sanjiao isn't found in a definition, but in the problem it was created to solve. And this is the absolute key. The moment you shift your question from what is Sanjiao to why must Sanjiao exist, the whole thing just clicks into place. It stops being an anatomical puzzle and becomes this brilliant, elegant piece of system design.
So by asking why, we get this incredibly powerful new answer. Sanjiao isn't a body part, it's the body's operating system. It's the master principle of order.
Think about it like this. Your body has all these different programs running all at once, right? Heating, cooling, digesting, defending. Sanjiao is the system that makes sure all those different functions can run at the same time without crashing the entire machine. It's the architecture that creates harmony out of what could be total chaos.
Now look at how perfectly this fits into the logical hierarchy of TCM. You start with qi, that's the basic life energy. Then, that energy gets differentiated by yin and yang, its two poles. Then, the 5 elements classify all its different functions, like warming or moving or storing. But that creates a problem. How do all these different things work together? Well, that's where Sanjiao comes in. It's the final, absolutely necessary step, the operating architecture.
And that really is the heart of it. Sanjiao is the answer to the most fundamental question you can ask about any complex system. Why doesn't it all just fall apart? In TCM, the answer is Sanjiao, the invisible system that ensures coordination and order.
So you might be thinking, okay, cool ancient idea, but what does it have to do with us today? Well, it turns out, this way of thinking about invisible systems is shockingly relevant right now. Just check out this parallel. The ancient question that led to the concept of Sanjiao is remarkably similar to a question modern medicine is grappling with more and more. When someone feels systemically sick, fatigued, in pain, just off, but all their organ tests come back normal, what's going on? Both of those questions point to a problem in the system, not in the individual parts. And this has led modern medicine to start focusing on its own invisible systems, things that are more about function and connection than physical form. You've got the fascia network, the interstitium, that super complex neuroendocrine immune network.
These are all functionally real, but you can't just point to them as a single organ.
But let's be super clear about this, because this is the part people often get wrong. The goal is not to say, aha, Sanjiao is actually the fascia. That would be missing the entire point all over again.
No, the real connection here is in the method. It just shows that any deep investigation into a living, complex being, whether it's ancient or modern, is eventually going to have to create concepts for vital systems that are functionally real but not physically obvious. The type of problem is the same.
And this brings us to the biggest takeaway of all. The real power of the Sanjiao concept isn't about the answer itself, but what it shows us about the power of asking the right question.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? The value of Sanjiao isn't some final definition. Its value is in the sophisticated method it represents, a way of thinking about the body that puts function, order, and systemic harmony first.
So get this. The fact that Sanjiao was defined as having a name but no form wasn't some kind of failure of ancient science. It was a feature, not a bug. It was a deliberate, highly sophisticated choice to say, for this particular problem, the function is what matters, the order is what's real, and trying to find a physical form just isn't the point of the discussion.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought. The story of Sanjiao is this powerful reminder that the biggest breakthroughs don't always come from a new answer, but from a better question. So, what are the invisible systems running our lives, our societies, our tech that we just fail to see? Because we're stuck asking, what is it, instead of why must it exist?